Today on Rescue USA. When the hills in Napa Valley, California are ablaze,
I just saw this huge orange glow.
first responders need all the help they can get.
I said, we're on the deck of the Titanic here. Get anybody you can.
The fire's right there.
And later, a monumental flood turns small-town Wisconsin upside down.
At that point, we seen the water rising so fast we started to evacuate people.
But the people had the power to save the day.
When everyone else is running out, these heroes are running in.
Wildfires are one of the most feared natural disasters on the planet, and rightfully so. They can move erratically and at a screaming pace, so it's no wonder it could be easy to be caught off guard, caught up, and in need of rescue. Fortunately, that rescue can come from above.
50 miles north of San Francisco is Napa, California. The scenic area is known for its stunning landscapes and impressive vacation homes. But on October 8th, 2017, the neighborhood on a mountain called Atlas Peak became famous for something else.
It was Sunday. Started out as a beautiful day. Sun was shining. It was a little bit breezy. And got ready for night shift, reported at 1800. And prepped the aircraft. We did a pre-flight and checked weather. And looked for any pending calls for service, and there were none, so we settled in for the shift. I was partnered with a guy that I'm partnered a lot with, Officer Whitney Lowe.
We were getting bounced around so much by the significant winds. That was the most turbulence that I had been in 6 years of flying here in the Bay Area, and it just didn't make sense to keep flying in that bad of winds without a call. And so we headed back towards the Napa airport.
Then about 9:45-ish, there was the initial call for a structure fire just north of us in Atlas Peak.
At the same time, Philip DeHaan and his wife Linda Savoie were at their home in Atlas Peak, waiting for some friends to arrive.
They called me around, I believe it was 9:45 or so, close to 10, saying there's a fire below and we can't make it up the hill. I don't know what we're gonna do. Then I just thought, okay, well, let's wait and see. Maybe they'll just put it out and you'll be able to come back up.
We were able to view back up valley and see the glow on the hillside, which was pretty easy to determine that I don't think it's a structure fire. I think it's a wildland incident. And from a distance, it looks like a little tiny speck. Well, rapidly, the little tiny speck started to grow exponentially.
As officers Gavitt and Lowe were flying back to Napa, they got a radio call from another CHP pilot, Jan Sears.
Jan told us over our in-house air-to-air frequency, hey, you guys should start up here. This is turning into a big deal.
Once the fire started, the combination of dry air, high winds, and miles of wooded hills produced an unstoppable blaze that was incinerating everything in its path.
Science Davidson, I'm being advised that the expo is open for evacuees. They'll hold up to 1,000 people, and they can open up another that can hold 200 if needed.
When we first approached the fire, I wasn't wearing night vision goggles, so I could just see the flames several hundred feet tall.
We just started proceeding up and down the fire line, and we could see most people were still unaware of, this large growing fire rapidly moving towards their homes.
Linda and Philip were among those in the dark until their friend called again.
Maybe 20 minutes later, she calls me back, frantic, saying, the whole mountain's on fire, you need to get out of there, you need to get out. After she called, I went to the window and I just saw this huge glow, orange glow, and the fire had already come right up that mountain.
We could see a couple Napa Sheriff deputies that were up in the area also doing knock and talks on the doors and alerting people. And that seemed to be working. We could see people getting in their cars, moving down the hill,
I heard helicopters hovering. And I came outside and we could see helicopters hovering with their loudspeakers and telling us, evacuate, evacuate, you leave your homes, evacuate, evacuate.
They immediately drove down the hill, but quickly faced a line of cars. Headlights were all pointing uphill. A neighbor gave them the bad news.
He says, we went down, it's an inferno, there's no way we had to come back up.
There's just no way.
However, with down power lines and flaming trees blocking the only way out, rescue via the typical mode, which would be fire truck, was now impossible.
We also heard the firefighters saying that there was no access for them. One of the nice things about helicopters is that we can usually land most places that are inaccessible otherwise.
Whether you're facing fires or floods, if you can't escape the danger zone, the next best thing you can do is make yourself visible. First responders need to see you if they're going to rescue you.
I've never seen it so close in my life.
These are people that we can actually make a difference for. And if we don't do something soon, this is going to become a lot more catastrophic.
The fire's right there.
Using night vision goggles to combat that smoky haze, officers Gavitt and Lowe spotted a cluster of people. They were about a mile from where Linda and Philip were trapped. They began making rescues, but were only able to take 4 passengers at a time.
I said, we're on the deck of that Titanic here. Get anybody you can. Get anybody with a helicopter and get them up here.
Meanwhile, their volunteer firemen had fought their way through the fire line and led a small group, including Linda and Philip, higher up the hill.
At that point, the fire was almost making a complete 360 around us.
And so it became very apparent to us that there was no way off this mountain and that it was just a matter of time.
October 8th, 2017 would go down in history as the night of the Northern California firestorm. 14 wildfires happened in 8 counties on that awful evening. In the hills of Napa, just below Atlas Peak, the only roads to safety were choked by flames, trapping dozens of people, including Philip DeHaan and his wife, Linda Savoy. As flames drew even closer, Linda and Philip waited for the helicopter to return. A fireman had some sobering words.
He gathered us around and he says, okay, we predict the fire to come down the ridge in an hour or so. And when it comes, just shelter in place here and let the fire go over you. I'm like, we're gonna die. We're gonna die. Like, this is it.
However, a beacon of hope was on the way.
At first, I didn't know what that was in the sky. It's all black and full of smoke, and I see these little lights. I'm like, what is that? And I see it's a helicopter, and it's landing. So I kind of got some hope. I'm like, wow, I can't believe anybody's doing this tonight.
I talked to several firemen that expressed so much gratitude that we were up there. I know they were fighting as hard as they could to make it up that hill and having so much trouble. He said it took them 20 minutes to get 200 yards.
Officer Lowe came out and he was very organized. He asked for our weights. Are you guys ready to go? Do you understand what you have to do? He told us where to get into the helicopter, where to sit, and what to do when we're in there. So obviously they had perfected their rescue technique.
At long last, Philip and Linda had a way out. However, their nightmare wasn't over yet because the turbulence made the flight a life-threatening ordeal.
You're sitting in a helicopter getting bounced around in 80-mile-an-hour winds, and all of a sudden that helicopter just falls, and all of a sudden it twists 180 degrees.
Pete kept us in the air, which was no small feat that night.
It wasn't pleasant flying at all, just huge updrafts, downdrafts.
Anytime I would peek, it would just make me freak out just to see all those flames everywhere.
They were so calm about it, and all of that I just assumed was routine. Didn't realize that this was quite an experience for them as well.
Strongest, worst conditions, I've ever been in.
14 harrowing minutes later, the helicopter landed at the nearby Queen of the Valley Hospital.
Landed safely, got out, and I wanted to kiss the ground. Instead of kissing the ground, I hugged Whitney instead.
I can't overstate how thankful I am for the whole crew that was working that night, for coming out, immediately asking us what they could do.
I think I turned around and they were already gone to get somebody else.
They weren't done yet, not by a long shot. That's what our first responders do, everything they can to save you.
Safe to say, that chaotic night was a life-changing experience for everyone who survived it, even the professionals.
Shoot, I thought this is why God put me on this earth, to do stuff like this, even though I can't talk about it without getting all emotional.
Those men are incredible for what they did that night.
They risk it all. Whitney has 5 kids and Pete has 2, and they're both happily married. They have reasons to celebrate life, and here they were prepared to give it all up for strangers like us.
Like a slow, creeping monster in some sort of an old horror film, flooding can spread and permeate almost everywhere, causing insurmountable damage. So when an overnight downpour overwhelmed creeks and rivers outside Madison, Wisconsin, many needed help to escape from the flooding. Thankfully, first responders were right there.
Black Earth, Wisconsin. It's a small town located in Dane County, just west of the state capital, Madison. It boasts a world-class trout stream and is full of pleasant, hard-working people who make great neighbors.
It's a small town, it's friendly, people care about each other.
On August 20th, 2018, Black Earth and the neighboring towns of Mazamani and Cross Plains started to get some rain. And a whole lot of it.
It started raining here early afternoon, and it just kept getting heavier and heavier.
My daughter had driven me up to work. I work at the bowling alley downtown. People were in and out. We were all kind of watching the storms. It just seemed like the sirens never stopped. It was just constant. We couldn't figure out what was going on.
All that rain meant one thing: flooding.
We were requested to assist the Cross Plains Fire Department with a swift water rescue that caught lots of people's attention because we don't have swift water rescues around here, ever.
Pelted by more than 11 inches of rain in a 3-hour period, multiple creeks and rivers overflowed their banks. Bridges were washed away. Roads became impassable.
Our first plan as a fire department was to try and sandbag and protect property, and we learned a few hours into this that the water was coming up so fast that that just wasn't possible.
The flooding began miles away, but due to the lay of the land, the chief knew that the path of destruction would soon inundate surrounding villages.
Water was starting to cross Highway 14 in the village of Black Earth. So at that time, I made a phone call to their fire chief, Mitch Hodson, and let them know that they needed to get back to their station because it was going to be flooding soon.
We set up a command post at the village office because it was flooded down at the station. We never thought water would ever get that close, and then the main street right in front of the village office started to flood too. At that point, we seen the water rising so fast we started to evacuate people for multiple blocks.
Concerned for the safety of his wife and visiting sister-in-law, Chuck Theobald called for help.
4 firemen came across our backyard and immediately formed a plan.
The firefighters carried the ladies across the yard to higher ground at a neighbor's house.
I followed behind with a fireman on each side of me through the backyard in water 4 inches above my waist.
Because so many major roads were washed out, it was imperative to gather resources for water rescues.
During that evacuation mode, we ended up bringing in mutual aid fire departments from southern Wisconsin, 2 swift water rescue teams, about 6 other fire boats. There were several rescues that were performed by private citizens.
Those volunteer rescues came from all angles and in all shapes and sizes, too.
I thought I would stop and ask the local police if I could take Highway 14 home, and he said, "Would you like to rescue some people tonight?" I go, "If you need me, I'd be happy to do that."
Pete Kramer's massive Army surplus vehicle came in extra handy that night.
Our first assignment was where we rescued a girl sitting on the roof of her car. She happened to be driving through an area and got washed into the lumber yard. 100% of the time, the water is probably here. When we go to the rescue places, the water was up to here.
When all was said and done, Pete saved 18 people, 1 dog, and pulled a few emergency vehicles out of deep water with that chain.
You'd be surprised how much of the community came back to save our heroes. Everybody's heroes. It's not just me. It's not just our first responders. Everybody helped.
A hero is someone who selflessly puts their own wants and needs aside for the greater good and safety of someone else, oftentimes a stranger. That's the mark of a true hero. They want to help others in the face of adversity.
Annie McKenzie was one of many who stood tall that nasty night. She'd rushed home from work, knowing that her place was directly in the flood zone.
The currents between the 2 houses on both sides of us was so strong we had firewood flying through the currents coming at us as we're trying to walk through.
Despite her basement being flooded, Annie didn't blink, helping Black Earth firefighters carry frightened neighborhood kids through the water to their trucks.
I said, I think there's fish nibbling at my toes. So I got the girls laughing and we were having fun. So by the time we got them to the fire truck, they were pretty well calmed down.
With the invaluable aid of their citizens and other agencies, these 2 volunteer departments, who normally handle from 50 to 100 calls in an entire year, kept their cool and came up huge on the busiest night in local history.
We ended up evacuating about 100 houses with multiple people by boat, by truck, all kinds of means.
We're proud to have walked away with no civilian or public safety injuries.
In August 2018, a 500-year storm pummeled 3 small towns in Wisconsin. The community united to evacuate hundreds of people from their homes and prevent any casualties.
I didn't do it to get any kind of hero status. I did it for the people.
For Black Earth Fire Chief Mitch Hodson, coming back to his flooded station house was a tough moment.
When we opened the door the first time, there was more water in the station than outside of the station. So it's kind of like a second home. And you walk in and it's just destroyed, just horrible feeling.
Over in Mazomanie, the flood struck a devastating blow. A quarter of the population was now homeless.
People needed food, you know, people had nothing. They had to evacuate with nothing.
Annette Geisler, the wife of the fire chief, helped organize support services.
This room that we're in now became a temporary village office. The fire station is a place where you can come and you can get the information, the help.
That momentum of brotherhood exploded within the community.
In the weeks to come, the people of Dane County used that small-town spirit and cooperation to move forward and rebuild their lives.
Throughout the whole ordeal, it was like people were showing up and kind of, next thing you know, things are just being carried out for you.
In Black Earth, the flooded fire station is being brought back to life, thanks to a lot of volunteers and an assist from a group of disaster restoration specialists.
We'd like to be first responders with you folks. Help right behind you.
Though this historic flood might have been immensely powerful, in the end, the people of Black Earth and Mazomanie proved that they were stronger.
The way the community came together was just amazing. To have all those people come out and volunteer to help us out, it brought tears to your eyes and made you realize how glad you are that you are living in a small town.
From wildfires to floods, it was all extremely dangerous. But in both situations, our first responders' first instinct was to get in there and rescue. I'm Ginger Z. Thank you so much for watching.